Have you ever wondered what it really takes to host the Olympic Games? Every few years, cities all over the world get into this massive, high-stakes competition. It's about politics, it's about money, and it's about having a huge vision. But today, we're going to dig into the data and find out what actually makes a winning bid. So for the 2026 Winter Games, the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, picked Milan Cortina in Italy. Everybody celebrated. But it kind of makes you think, right? Was it just that they had the best presentation, or was their bid actually genuinely the strongest one on paper? Well, we're about to find out. So, how are we going to solve this? We're diving into this really fascinating academic study. What they did was they took the IOC's own reports and used some smart data analysis to basically work backwards and figure out what the IOC truly cares about. This is how we get past the headlines and into the hard numbers.
All right, let's set the stage for our little investigation here. We're zeroing in on the bid for the 2026 Winter Games.
Okay, so at the beginning, in what the IOC calls the dialogue phase, there were 4 cities throwing their hats in the ring. You had Milan Cortina from Italy, Calgary from Canada, Stockholm, Sweden, and Erzurum, Turkey. 4 big contenders, but of course, only one was going to walk away with the prize.
The whole point of the study was basically to put on a detective hat. It looked at 20 key things the IOC grades on. Everything from stadiums to how the public feels about it, and use that to do a completely objective, data-first analysis of these 4 cities.
And this is where it gets really cool. How exactly did this study crack the code on how the IOC makes its decisions? Let's break it down. Now, the methods they used are pretty complex, but you can really boil it all down to a simple 3-step investigation. First, they pinpointed those 20 key factors. Step 2, they used the data to figure out how important each one really is to the IOC. And finally, step 3, they used those importance scores to rank each city. Simple as that. And that brings us to the juicy part, the results. This is where we learned what truly tips the scales when you're trying to win the Olympic Games. So just think about it for a second. With 20 different factors on the table, we're talking finance, transport, hotels, the whole shebang. What do you think is the single most critical piece of the puzzle for the IOC? The answer carries a weight of 9.29%. Now, I know that might not sound like a huge number, but think about it. When you're splitting the pie 20 different ways, that is a massive slice. It makes this one factor by far the most important thing. So what is it? It's the sheer number of venues, stadiums, arenas, rinks, you name it, that are either already built or have a solid plan in place. Before anything else, the IOC wants to know one thing. Do you have the places for us to play the games? And when you look at the rest of the top 3, a really clear pattern starts to show up. Right after venues, the next most important thing is having enough rooms ready to go in the Olympic Village. And number 3, a dedicated train system from the airport. You see it, right? It's all about concrete, ready-to-use stuff for the athletes and for travel. Okay, now for what I think is the most surprising part of this whole analysis. If that's what's at the top of the list, what gets pushed all the way to the bottom? Well, the data shows that one of the least important factors has a weight of just 3.34%. To put that in perspective, that's almost 3 times less important than having the venues ready. And that factor is a city's general public transportation. Isn't that wild? A specific train from the airport is a top priority, but the overall quality of a city's existing roads and bus lines, it's one of the least important things they look at. When you put them side by side like this, wow, the gap is just huge. Look at that. Having venues and places for athletes to stay is nearly 3 times more critical than getting private money to help pay for it or having a great citywide transit system. It really shows that the IOC wants a guaranteed, almost self-contained Olympic bubble. So now we know what the IOC is really looking for. Let's apply those scores to our 4 contenders and see the final rankings. And there you have it. Milan Cortina comes out on top with a really strong score of 74.32. Calgary is a pretty distant second at 63.45, with Stockholm right behind them. And Erzurum, which actually got cut earlier in the real process, well, the data confirms that was the right call. They ranked lowest here too. Seeing it like this on a bar chart makes it even more obvious. I mean, just look at that gap between Milan Cortina and everyone else. It wasn't even close. According to the data, the Italian bid was just head and shoulders above the competition.
So, what does this all mean? The big takeaway is that the numbers perfectly match what happened in the real world. The study proved that the IOC's choice wasn't just a random preference, it was the right call based on their own priorities. Our initial mystery is officially solved.
So, what can we learn from all this for the future? Well, this analysis isn't just a history lesson about 2026. It's basically a blueprint, a roadmap for any city that has dreams of hosting the Olympics one day.
So if you're a city thinking about making a bid, here's your playbook, straight from the data. Have your venues and athlete housing ready to go. Make sure you've got that dedicated airport train. Get your local citizens excited and on board. And show you've hosted big events before. Oh, and don't think that waving around private money is going to be your silver bullet. The IOC cares way more about the concrete and steel. And that's exactly what the authors of the study said. They called this analysis a strategic framework. It's a guide that lays out exactly what it takes to succeed in this incredibly tough competition to become an Olympic host. And that brings us to our last thought. We now have a really clear blueprint for what it takes to win, but following that blueprint means spending a massive amount of money on some very specific things. So the real question for any city out there is, knowing just how high the price of admission is the Olympic dream still worth it?